like a roommate.
Hi beauties, welcome back, or welcome. If it's your first time here, first time seeing my face, I am going to do the round 2 of the eyeshadow palette tag that's going around here on YouTube. I know that part 2 was started by Samantha March and Allie Glines. I'm pretty positive part 1 was as well. Apologies if I am wrong, but I will of course link their channels, or I'll link their videos down in my description box. But I love an eyeshadow palette tag. I love an opportunity to talk about eyeshadow, to kind of give you a peek into my collection. I think that's what's like really fun about these videos. So I have about a dozen palettes here, and let's just dive in. Okay, give me a like, subscribe if you like this kind of content. I genuinely appreciate anybody that spends time here on my channel watching my videos. It's crazy and it means a lot to me. So prompt number 1 is my all-time favorite palette. Okay, this was really hard. I have used and tried so many eyeshadow palettes, but I was thinking in terms of like, if I could only keep one palette forever, or if I like lost all of my palettes, what's a palette that I know I would repurchase, that I know I would want to have in my collection? And this may not come as a surprise to you, but it's my ABH Norvina palette. This is just one of my absolute favorite palettes, of course. Now, if you have been here on my channel, I know you're so sick and tired of this story, but in case it's your first time here, this is actually my second purchase of this palette. I bought it when it originally came out, used up, honestly, the whole damn thing, except for like a couple of these darker shades here, but I just like, these tones are so perfect for me. I love the way I look in this palette. Like, if I want a palette that I know the formula is good, I'm going to be able to create something that I love, I'm going to feel beautiful in, I mean, hands down, it has to be this palette. This is, I mean, I hope to always have this palette in my collection. Prompt number 2 is a palette that you keep for the memories. Now, I know I've said this before too, but I am just not the type of person that hangs on to things, hangs on to makeup from memories, because I do hang on to things for memories, but not makeup, not palettes. It's just not something I do. Like, I do not have a problem getting rid of makeup. So I kind of thought about this one a little bit differently. And even with this palette being the answer to this category, I will not have a problem decluttering this palette when the time comes. But the palette that first came to mind was the Beauty Bay Nikki Tutorials palette. Now, this palette, let me show it to you in case you've never seen it. But, I mean, beautiful. Beautiful. I love this palette. I actually really enjoy the color story of this, even though there's a lot of colors in here that, if I'm being honest, I'm just not going to get use out of. Like, I'm never going to use this like neon yellow, this red. I'm never going to use, I actually have used this blue. Not a huge fan. Cobalt blues like this, I'm not drawn to, but overall, first of all, this palette has memories for me because I bought this when it came out. It's been at least a year and a half. This came out like fall of 2020. And that is when I started my channel. So I bought it around that time. This palette makes me think of my friend Chelsea, who no longer does YouTube video, or no longer does makeup YouTube. She used to have a beauty channel. She has since kind of focused her creative energy into a different form. She has an adult coloring book channel, which I love watching too. But I bought her one of these palettes when it came out. I had it shipped to her in the UK. She created like a really, really fun, beautiful look with it. This palette just reminds me of those times. Like, it reminds me of first starting my channel, getting to know Chelsea, like forming that friendship. And I just love it. The next palette, or the next prompt, is what's a palette that's not necessarily a favorite, but something that you can't get rid of? Again, just for the sake of this video, I picked a palette, but I will not have trouble getting rid of this palette. This might be upsetting to some people, but I had to choose the Pat McGrath holiday palette for last year. It's just not a favorite, you guys. And it's not because it's not beautiful. I mean, it's very, very pretty. I think maybe the issue is that I just haven't used it enough. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the quality. I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know what it is that makes me not love this palette. I think it's because I loved the holiday launch so much the previous year, which I know is totally contradictory to how most people feel about these palettes. Most people hated the one before this, but I really loved it. I don't know. It's just not a favorite. I need to rotate it in. Maybe I'll put it in my stash for a little bit, get some more use out of it, but I'm sorry, it's just not a favorite. Next is my 2021 favorite. So if you watched my favorite makeup or best makeup, I forget what I titled it, of 2021 video, this is not going to surprise you. If you watched my channel at all, like the second half of last year, this is not going to surprise you. And I'm not going to talk about it too long, but the Patrick Ta Major Dimension. I mean, just beautiful. An absolute stunning favorite palette. Like, I will never not love this. I love the cream shadows. They're so freaking easy to use. They work beautifully on their own. They work beautifully under the mattes. I love that there's different textures within the shimmers. Like, this shade here is a different texture than the other ones. I love that. I love that these shimmers they're not like super foiled. They just look like glass on your lid. And that is really kind of the look that I am getting more into as far as shimmers. I still love a good textured foiled metallic, but I really am loving just like these more yeah, I mean, they just look, like I said, they just look wet. They look like just liquid glass on your lid. It's a favorite. A palette that sparks joy. This is probably not going to be a surprise either, but it's the Jackie Aina, ABH and Jackie Aina. I mean, hello. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Like, purple is my favorite. You have these two super bold, beautiful purples. This palette still slaps. This palette still hits after all these years. Everything works so well together. Even on my fairer skin, these colors look beautiful. They're super saturated, but they still work well for me. I mean, like, everything about this palette was so well done. It just was so well done. I don't know why Jackie Aina hasn't gotten more collabs, because I mean, knocked it out of the park. Next prompt is a new favorite. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I have not bought hardly any makeup this year, and I know we're only in February, but that's pretty good. Like, I really have not bought any makeup in the last couple months. So I had to think back a little bit farther. So it's not new, but it is one of like the newer palettes in my collection, and I absolutely adore her. It's the Natasha Denona Retro. We love her. We love her so much. This is a palette that just like gets me excited. I love the formulas in here, and I'm not really even a huge wearer of pink eyeshadow, but there's something about the tones of these pinks that's just different, you know? I mean, obviously they're not like bubblegum pinks or magentas. They're more muted. I know I've mentioned before, I love the addition of like the cool toned browns in here. I think it really kind of grounds things. But again, it's just one of those palettes that like I know I am going to be able to get a really beautiful look with this. And I love using it. Okay, next is what is a palette that's underrated in your collection. I cheated. I'm sorry. I have two because I really feel strongly about this. And number one, I had to shout out my Flower Beauty. These Flower Beauty 6-pan shadows of like, they're all just like the foiled kind of metallic shadows. I just like, look, I just don't feel like people talk about these enough. I'm sorry, I just don't. They are leaps and bounds better than a lot of eyeshadows in my collection. Way more expensive eyeshadows. I mean, desert lights, jungle lights, whatever your preference is. If you like more of a deep jewel toned saturated situation, or if you like these more neutral rosy golds, I mean, you will not be disappointed. You just won't. And then the second option I picked has to be my BH BFF palette. I don't know, is BH Cosmetics still going to be a thing? Like, I heard that they filed for bankruptcy. I don't really know what that means for them as you know, and for the future of their company. But this palette is so well done. Like, this is another palette that I just don't use enough, but every time I use it, I'm like, damn, this palette is beautiful. I created like one of my most favorite looks that I've ever worn was with these two shades. This shade, Messy, is kind of like a duochrome. It's like a brown, green type situation. I mean, the neutrals are gorgeous. It's so good. It's a wonderful palette. Quality is amazing, as you would expect. Next is my favorite collab, and you guys, this was so hard. This was so hard. There are just so many amazing collab palettes, and I wanted to include about 5, but this is a palette that I continue to reach for. I fell so in love with this palette. Like, from the day that I got it, it just has never lost its luster to me. And it's the Sydney Grace Mel Thompson Tiny Marbles palette. If you don't have this palette, and I actually have no idea if it's still for sale. I hope they continue to sell it and restock it. It'd be wonderful if they made it permanent. But look at this palette. Like, there is so much versatility within this palette. This is a palette that you could use year round. You could use it every single month of the year. It would be beautiful. I mean, the quality of Sydney Grace shadows is incredible. All of these tones look good together, pair well together. The shimmers are out of this world. It's just like, it's such a different, unique color story, but it just makes sense to me. Like, I don't know, in my brain, it clicks. And I absolutely love this palette. I love it. Next is a palette that I didn't expect to love. So this one was a little bit difficult because I feel like I do have kind of, I mean, everything's relative, right? But as far as like within the YouTube space, I feel like I have a smaller collection, and I don't buy a whole lot of things without expecting to love them. Like, I spend my own money on my makeup, so I want to love the things I buy, and I generally buy things knowing that I will like them. However, I didn't really expect to like this palette as much as I do. This is the NARS Summer Solstice. This was their summer release last year. And I don't know why I didn't think I would love this, because these tones are so me. It's beautifully warm toned browns. This red is gorgeous. All these like bronze, it's lovely. Like, there's different textures within this palette. I think what made me want to try it, there's a couple shades swatched there. I feel like for the most part, I don't hear too many people rave about NARS eyeshadows. Now, their last few releases are an exception. I think the last, whatever their fall, was it their fall release? The palette, I don't even know the name of it, but it had like the greens and blues in it. It was a little bit more cool toned than this one. People love that palette. People still rave about that palette. That's probably the most that I've heard people talk about NARS shadows. Yeah, I just kind of bought this on a whim. Like, I had never tried NARS eyeshadows, kind of wanted to see what their formula was like, and I love it. I absolutely love it. The mattes in here work great. Like I said, there's different textures of shimmers, which you know I love. They do have kind of these, you know, I said I like that glassy look on your eye. Just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And again, I don't use it enough, but didn't expect to love it as much as I do. Next is the newest palette to my collection. This palette I think I bought this right at the beginning of the new year, if not like the last few days of 2021, but it's the Vanity Makeup, the Signature palette. This is a palette I've wanted since it launched, but I did not want to pay the $95 that they wanted for it. So I actually got this on a pretty good deal. I got $25 off of it. So that price seemed a little bit more reasonable to me. I didn't think I would be able to find or get it at a better deal than that. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger. It cost me about 70 bucks, but this is it. If you have not seen it, just a really beautiful neutral palette. You have warmer tones, cooler tones. Again, these shimmers are stunning. They're stunning. They're more of like the shimmers I've been talking about. They're not like the most impactful, but on your eyes, like, they just look so wet, and they, like, the light catches them and they just scatter, and they really, really are beautiful. The mattes in here work amazing. I've really been enjoying using this palette. I don't even know what else Vanity Makeup sells, but this is great. And then the last prompt is the first palette that you used in 2022. And to be honest, I can't really remember, but this is one of the palettes that's been in my stash for at least the last month. And I know this is the first palette I used in my stash, you know, rotation. And it's the ColourPop Mandalorian. This is what it looks like. It's, again, beautiful. I've used this several times since it's been in my stash. I'm actually wearing it on my eyes today. Everything is so complimentary. I haven't used like the silver shadows yet. Silver's not a color I reach for a whole lot, but yeah, great ColourPop quality. I love this. Is kind of like a duochrome shade here in the middle. Yeah, that's the Mandalorian, and I'm pretty sure that was the first palette I used this year. But that's it, you guys. That is all of the prompts. I hope that was fun to watch. I know I love watching videos like this. I think Samantha has like a playlist under her original video where you can add your video to if you want, and there's like dozens of people's videos out there. I've been watching all of them. They're so much fun to watch. Like I said, I love kind of getting a peek into people's collection, seeing what people love. But again, if you've made it this far, please like, please subscribe. It really does just mean a lot to me. I would love to have you stick around for some more content, but until then, take care of yourselves and take care of each other, beauties.